Oh, do you want me to see the obvious? Right. I mean, this thing obvious I don't mention because I don't want to bring myself into it as an example. But one thing people like me are highly aware of, and what why I was so hostile towards can't believe there's people that don't understand why there needs to be public whatever way it comes, healthcare for people who don't have a lot of money. And also like you need to have all different kinds of assistance to such people. The reason being is that no matter how bad like my health conditions and stuff, I mean, when you have privilege, the access to recovery is I mean, you never like lose sight of the fact that you have access to these like new treatments and this and that, and could you find out like me like my whole life, everything I've been doing with my life has been healing, but at all times I'm aware that that this is not available to most people, so it's like I'm always aware of it, but like you could be in this much pain. I don't mean the pain you guys are putting it, I mean the regular pain I live with. You could be in that much pain and not be able to get. You can't live on the disability so petty. They're like, right. I mean, you may have to like find. I mean, you may be in a situation where people commit suicide over situations like that. I mean, they can't support themselves on the disability, but they can't work, but they don't know what to do, but they're in debt because they had to borrow money to pay for something for their kid or something. I mean, the idea of having access to the people I know who've been in a recovery from physical, mental, whatever, the drug and alcohol problems. We're on our own path of recovery, but at least it's possible to be on a recovery path. I mean, the idea that people don't have access to even basic, not necessarily, just the basics of being able to heal, and maybe, and certainly people are in as much have as many physical, psychological, and substance abuse problems that I do, and a lot of them deserve care more like for particularly soldiers and stuff. I mean, a lot of them, it's a crime that to allow that persons like me would have access to treatment like with and take it for granted when there's people who've been really been through situations where they're not being treated. They would get like petty government assistance, and there still is no real full national universal health care here. I mean, that's not okay. But unless you've been in see, a lot of people who are like in the political, see, people who are like in the political thing, like congressmen, staffers for congressmen, whatever's on campuses that's like the mainstream political people who are going to become staffers, or people who work. They part of what they all have in common is they must be healthy. Because those are the things you could do if you have like a chronic condition of some kind. So, like, right, I mean, that's one thing you'd love to remind them of, like, what would happen if they got sick or ill or had as many problems as a person like I did. Would they would then realize what they're taking for granted, which is that they can get access to different kinds of care. If one type of care doesn't work, like you could try a different thing and say, "Oh, now we got a better match for what's wrong with you." I mean, that's all unavailable altogether for most people at this point. That's not the kind of country that's not an industrialized country. Should not be like that. That doesn't make any sense. I mean, that's something where that's not the way. Then is it what's it? Chomsky gave a lecture called "Prospects for Democracy," and he said, crucially, we have to understand what we mean by democracy. That is the extent that we have one. I mean, whether or not it's functioning, but like, do we have such a thing? Well, no. I mean, I would say no. I mean, no. This is not this is not democracy. I mean, this is not that. I mean, the very fact that like people don't have access to anything unless you have basically like what's a lot of money in the big picture. I mean, even if people whatever it is. I mean, or a big salary or a good job with a corporation or something, get healthcare. I mean, nah. Then free. It's like they said in the Amartya Sen's book. It's a book about development, but developing countries. It applies here too. I mean, nah, we don't have a democracy. I mean, a lot of people aren't free. They're not free in the sense that like they're limited in so many different ways. I could be here and be in the recovery and say, oh great, we get to make videos. I'm doing something with my time even though I can't work. well. I can also afford these computers. I can also, get a book to do the activity. I can also be in recovery. This is all unavailable to most people. That's not a democracy. And it would the there's it would without the economic component of that, then that's not democracy. One of the things I love about that documentary where they interview these old ladies who like were kind of from, I guess, my great grandmother's generation, no, my grandmother's generation, who came over here from Russia, like, and like were in that wave of like World War I, like sort of, kind of like, immigrant anarchist type movements and stuff. They interviewed this, and she was so old that she did the interview, but like it's all great. What she said is that when they came over to this country from Russia, she said that like what we thought was, this is what they thought, and it's interesting. Tells you a better picture what democracy is supposed to mean. She said, like, see, we were living in Tsarist Russia, and she said the whole time we were in our village and saw the unfairness and the way the Cossacks treated the men like they were cattle, and like there was no respect for people. And she said we thought it was because of Russian Tsarism, like it's Tsarism, it's the brutality of the Tsar, like, and then they had heard this like before mass communication. But what they knew about America was, see, they would talk about America a lot in the village and say like, no, see, it's different. They don't have Tsarism, like they have democracy, like they didn't know. They just knew. See, they don't mistreat each other. Everyone's civil. Everyone's treated well. Everyone has access to things like equally. Like they have democracy. Like it was this idea that it was so different from Tsarism. And then when they came here and World War I broke out, and like they were poor, but they like tried to organize in their immigrant, or they just had meetings in the immigrant neighborhoods to discuss like how they felt. Like, should the men go to the war? Was it wrong? These kind of things, right? And it was broken up by the police, like Woodrow Wilson's, looking for the, I don't know, the communists or whatever at the time. And she said you have the vivid memory of being the way they were treated because they were poor, is what it was. They were poor immigrants, and they're being treated this way because they tried to do this and that, or they didn't have access to anything because they didn't have money. And she said then she realized, she said the reason she became kind of like went into these anarchist movements of the World War I era here, she said because she realized, oh wait, it doesn't matter whether it's Russian Tsarism or like a liberal democratic regime. Like it is possible, no matter what the form of government, for those with money and power to abuse and limit the freedom of the rest of everyone else. And she's like, and then I wasn't surprised by anything that happened because a democratic liberal regime doesn't guarantee it, And like it's true, like this isn't really democracy when that many people aren't really free. You gotta have the economic part to be free. Then you could talk about other kinds of freedom. So my father used to say, he said, look, see, money does not buy happiness, but it's sort of a necessary condition of it. If you don't have any money and you're dependent on like welfare checks, you have a very difficult time being happy, And I think that's true. Like you're limited in so many ways. If the economics of it are unfair, they're right. Every other thing is kind of not to be talked about. People have to have. If you don't have access to a doctor when you get sick, and I do, then we're not. That's a democracy because I can go to the doctor and like most people can't when they feel like this and have pain. That's the democracy should be economic first, and then we can talk about everything else. That's how people like me see it.